Hello, I'm attorney Ruth Ellen Post, and when the Greater Salem Chamber asked me to give our member businesses some tips on contracts and agreements, I was thrilled for the chance to just highlight for you some of the more common problems that I've seen business people encounter, often after it's too late, over my 30 years of law practice, so that you might be better prepared to avoid some of those. But first, I have to give you the typical lawyer disclaimer. This little discussion is not in any way a substitute for individual legal advice. Now, I'm required to say that, even though I think most of you probably know that. No two situations are ever exactly alike, and it's impossible in a short video of this kind for hundreds of viewers to know each situation or to address your situation properly. So that's not what we're trying to do. Instead, please look at this as just a very general overview for a general business audience about some of the contractual pitfalls that you might want to watch out for. Contracts surround us, of course, nowadays everywhere, even in our personal lives as well as our business lives. I mean, you can't accept a new credit card or even open a package of software or say yes to some corporate emails without finding yourself bound to a contract probably the size of the Magna Carta. We all know what that's like. And when you own your own business, those contracts can have monumental significance. Every time you hire an employee or become an employee, every time you sign a lease, buy into a franchise, form a partnership, agree to co-ownership of an LLC, order parts or supplies, hire a consultant, borrow money, almost everything you do in the business setting is going to involve some sort of contractual arrangement. And what I've seen over the years is that when things are running smoothly, people often don't care a whole lot about the fine points of these agreements that they're now a party to. It's when things go a bit wrong that they discover the fine points can matter very much indeed. So it pays to start thinking long-term and get it right at the outset. That really is the only chance that you have to shape it as much as possible to your advantage and for your protection. You need to do that before you sign on the dotted line, or you won't have the chance, in all likelihood, to do that at all. One of the things I see happening in more recent times now is one of the oldest principles of contract law is more and more being forgotten. That's the principle that contracts are supposed to be a meeting of the minds, as they say. And that presumes at least a minimal amount of some negotiation between the parties to arrive at the terms they genuinely agree on. Now, here we are in the 20th century, and unfortunately that's becoming, as I see it, less and less the case. And that's unfortunate because I think it's the small businesses, it's the little guy who is most often hurt by this, and that's one of the things I want to address with you. I strongly encourage people to approach contracts as equal parties, equal with the other person you're speaking to, everywhere possible. Now, I say that knowing that you're not going to be able to negotiate with Microsoft before breaking open that package of software. That's not going to happen. You're not going to be able to dicker with your utility company before having service turned on. But in more everyday business dealings, that is your right. And it's important to know what your range of options are and to use those to your long-term advantage. Now, I've seen over the years that business people tend to be very focused on things like price, the services and goods that they're buying, the timeline involved. I find that they're not at all so focused on the legal aspects, mainly the question of what happens if things fail to go exactly as planned in that contractual relationships. So here are some of the things to look for. Watch out for anybody who says, oh, it's just a formality, as they hand you, 30 pages of boilerplate. It's never just a formality. Those 30 pages or 2 pages, whatever it might be, define the entire working relationship in excruciating detail sometimes. So always ask for time to read the whole thing. Ask for time to get some expert advice on all those so-called technicalities. Beware when somebody says, oh, all of our customers, tenants, whatever you fill in the blank, always sign this. First of all, it's been my observation that that's not always true. Often there have been a few smart cookies who negotiated some terms of their own, and I encourage you to be one of those people. Here are some things to look for in contracts that might be put in front of you, or things to think about when you're designing a contract of your own. First of all, what remedies does it dictate if something goes wrong? That can become really crucial. You know, the whole point of a contract is that you have an agreement you can enforce. So if the contract dictates how you go about enforcing that and what restrictions there might be, or limits your options in some way, you want to look carefully at that, because if something does go wrong, it can make all the difference. Some examples. Many contracts do state what court systems you're locked into. If it's New Hampshire and you're a New Hampshire business, maybe that's fine. But if you're in New Hampshire and it locks you into the New York court system or some other state, and I've seen that from time to time, even worse examples than that, that can be problematic. Again, in terms of what remedies you're given in that agreement, does it allow the other party to recover not just damages that they may suffer if you don't live up to the agreement, but also their attorney's fees and costs for taking you to court? Maybe that's fine, but does it give you the same option? Does it impose other penalties besides just damages? Sometimes a contract will include what they call a liquidated damages clause that spells out, rather than going to court and fighting it out there, it spells out what damages would be to one or the other party if someone defaults. Is that a fair amount? Is it arrived at fairly? Always look at that if it exists. Sometimes a contract will create some other exclusive remedy other than going to court. It might prescribe binding arbitration, which locks you out of your right to go to court and defend your rights. Some people prefer that, some don't. Be aware, if that's there, what that means to you. The key feature, as I said, of every contract is that it be enforceable. Enforceable how, enforceable at what costs, and what rights might you be giving up. Those things are essential to understand. Another key thing to look at overall as you read through the agreement or as you create your own, how reciprocal is it, especially in one you're just given? How reciprocal is that? Does it give the same protection to you that it gives to the other party? Does it give the same options to you that it gives the other party? Another thing to look at, what exit strategies are provided in that agreement? Are they fair? Again, are they reciprocal? Giving you the same or appropriately similar options that the other party has? For example, if the other party can undo the whole agreement on a week's notice, is that a potential disaster for you? Maybe you want to negotiate something different. And do you have the same options? In certain kinds of agreements, there are additional things that can be critically important. For example, a clause requiring non-disclosure of your business information to competitors. That can be extremely important. In certain kinds of agreements, a non-compete clause, especially in employment situations, partnerships, joint ownership of LLCs, and the like. Does your agreement provide an amicable way out for the parties? Especially where there's a long-term business relationship involved, if someone becomes ill or retires or has a change of career focus. In closing, I'll just say that small businesses in particular are often reluctant to spend the time or the money that it takes to really understand what they're signing, and more than that, to work at shaping it to meet their long-term prospects. But you know, the only chance you really have to do that is at the outset, before you sign on the dotted line. So I can't encourage you strongly enough to make sure that you do take the opportunity to do that. It's an investment in your long-term business success. I'm attorney Ruth Ellen Post. Working with small businesses is all I do, and I wish you every success with yours.